Now it's time to learn how to make the text frames and image frames pretty. So we'll be discussing about all that's related to changing the appearance of the objects that you're working with in InDesign. And first of all, we will be adding a stroke around this image. I'll just simply select the image frame with the black arrow, and then from this drop down you can assign a stroke color. Let's just say here I've added a stroke color. This is like adding a border or a frame around your image. And let me choose maybe this color, and then to see better I'm going to increase the stroke size. Now you can hold down Shift key to increase the stroke size faster. It will give 10-point increment just with one click. And then if I want to change the alignment of the stroke, maybe if I set it to a different one, I'll be able to see better. Let's just set it here. I'll just select this. Select and change it to here. Yeah, I can change the alignment of this. Shows inside here. So what I can do is I can go to stroke options. I currently don't have them here. Let's go to properties. Here in stroke options, here it is currently at the center. I can align it to be on the inside or maybe outside the image. So you have other options like changing the joints, and that will affect the corners, like here. Now we have the round corners, and you can also have bevel corners. I'll just increase the size to make it appear better. Let's just increase here, one click, and there. So that's bevel and that's round corners. And you also have this gaps option, which will be visible when you have an open path. Now if you change this, you won't see any different because this is a closed shape. Now the actual size style of the stroke we can also change in here in the type drop down menu. We have solid. You can change it to maybe thick or thin. Or maybe I can choose these diamonds, white diamonds, or Japanese dots, and so on and so forth. Now these can be changed, of course, in size. I don't have to be huge with this. I'll just bring down the size, just increased here. Okay, so I can bring down the size here, and I can choose it to be inside, center, or maybe outside. Now while you're working with the dashed lines, you can also change the gap and all that. Let's say the dashed one. Okay. Currently the gaps at the moment are empty, but you can actually set a different color in between here. In this you can choose cyan. There I have changed the color. I'll just choose the joint to be normal. Okay, so you have several additional features here for aligning these dashed lines. Now I'm not going to go through all these options because most of them are quite self-explanatory, but I will show you the start and the end points on the other page. So I'll just change the page for now. Just go to this one. Okay. Now working with lines in general, here you will see a couple of different ways of adding lines in your design. So if I press W, you will see we have a line on the left, and then we have lines around the text. And now this line here on the left is made using line tool here that we had. With this tool, you can click and draw line. And if you hold the shift key, then you can make sure you draw a straight line or maybe a diagonal line. Also, once the line is created, you can change the attributes up in here. You can increase the stroke and style and a lot more stuff. Now, similarly to the stroke settings we used before, is the same thing again. You can also use the start and the end points on the line. Let's go to properties here. I'll just click on strokes here. All right. And so maybe I'll just choose a square here. So there it appears square at the start point. And at the end point, maybe I'll just select an arrow here. And we have an arrow there. So I could create something more like an annotation, and by using the white arrow tool, that's a direct selection tool. It's black arrow, just select this anchor point, and you can actually move this around, and you can point at certain, just one click, and then just one click here, and then move this around like this. You can point it at any thing, and you can label any image or any paragraph or something like that. Of course, I can move the other endpoint as well, like so. And if I feel like compared to the line weight, these endpoints are too big, I can reduce the size. So I can reduce them individually, making them this square a little smaller. So I had here a scale, just bring down that, and there you can see the change in my size. Or I can make them both smaller by linking these two together and then bring down the size, both of them simultaneously. Now you can also swap these endpoints just by clicking on this option. It's here, this is the align here. The swap here, it is here. You can swap start and end points by clicking on this option. You can also change the alignment, whether you want the tip to be extended or beyond actual lines. That is the option here. This is the actual line. The anchor point ends here, but if I click on this option, it will go beyond that and put it the end points and the starting points with respect to that point. The line tool is not actually the only way to add divisions in your composition, especially when you work with type. You have obviously the other option under this underlined text. I'll just move this around here. I'll just delete this for now. So when you go to this, I'll just go into this paragraph. I'll select the cursor here, and I can go to this option. Now within the character formatting options, I have certain more options that we discussed earlier. Now you can use Ctrl Shift U as a shortcut to toggle of underlining the line here. Ctrl Shift U. So that's a way of toggling on the line, and there is another very useful feature. It's called rules, and you can assign it above or below a paragraph. So let me just show you on this last paragraph. I have my cursor placed within the paragraph is enough. I don't actually have to select the whole paragraph, similarly to any other features that I normally use to format a paragraph, and the settings can be found in this additional drop down menu which I mentioned here. So all these settings that could not be fit into the option bar just because there are so many settings that we can apply to text in InDesign. So what we need here is paragraph rules. Here, click on this. So selecting this, I will be able to add rule to my paragraph. Now, I have two options here, rule above or rule below. Currently to the selected paragraph, just keep the rule on. I'll check the preview on. So, okay. I have to make sure that's offset because otherwise it is going to cross the first line in the paragraph. So what I'm going to do is to increase the offset. I'm going to click on this option and maybe I'll choose it at 3 mm for now. I can also reduce the thickness of this, bring it like 0.5 point. Or let's say I want a type to be a Japanese dots, or I want the color to be different, maybe red. Here, red. And so on and so forth. Also, I can change additional settings here. But if I want to have another line underneath or after this paragraph, I will need to switch to the rule below. Here, I can set up the way I want it. Now you can also have a strike through option as well, which is another line, but instead of being underneath a word, it is going to actually go across it. Now that's the option here in strike through. If I select this word, let's just say this word. Now if you intentionally want to cross over a certain character, that is another useful option you can apply here using this option. Going to, and here you can apply this strike through just by, you can also do this simply by drawing shapes with the to draw line tool. Also, you can apply effects of a line tool using the stroke settings for frames. Now we'll take a look at the shapes. Now, InDesign is not supposed to be a useful illustration tool, but it still gives you a couple of options, and it can help you create simple drawings while working with the design elements. Now, one of the basic tools you can use for drawing shape is the rectangle tool, and of course you have the ellipse tool and the polygonal tool as well. So starting with the rectangle tool, you can actually use it very similarly to frame tools. You can click and drag and draw a rectangle. And if you decide to place somewhere else, you can press spacebar and you can move this around like so. Even while you're drawing the shape, you can reposition it, and that's quite useful. Let me just draw something like that, and of course if I want to draw something to a certain size, instead of clicking and dragging, I can just click in the dialog box and double click here, and I can draw 10, let's say 10 by 10 height to width, and it creates a square. Of course, I can shift click and drag to resize and shape shape it again, transform it again, and I can place it somewhere else by moving it around like so. Now if I want to quickly duplicate this shape, I can hold down the, I'll just delete this, I just hold down the Alt key here, and when you see this double arrow, so it moves. Here I have made a copy. I can also hold Shift so it stays in vertical or horizontal direction. Doesn't move much around. So Alt click is the duplicate and Shift to keep it in place. But once I start using Alt and drag with that, I don't actually need to hold down the Alt key anymore. It is considered already a duplicate. Before I let go of the shape or duplicate, I can use the arrow keys to add more shapes. I'm clicking on right arrow key, it is giving me more of these shapes. Or I can give more columns here. As you can see, it gives. So if I wanted to create, let's say, a building, I can just create like this. Like in just a few clicks, I can just create the whole building. It is similar to using Gridify. You might remember when we placed in the multiple images at the same time. It's a very similar shortcut, but here I'm using it to duplicate and create multiple instances at once. Now you can call this duplicate into a grid, and also of course we can change attributes of multiple selected objects at the same time. I just let go of this. I can use the fill color here. I can change the fill color, and let's say I don't need the strokes, so I'll just go back here and choose none, so that just set to none. Now similarly to the rectangle tool, we have the ellipse tool. I'll just go ahead and delete the squares as I don't need them for now. So I'll just choose the ellipse tool, and you have the shortcut L to access this as well. And I can do same things with the ellipse tool. I can hold Shift and just to give me a perfect circle. Now if I hold up arrow key or down arrow key, it is going to give me more of the columns and rows. Increasing columns and rows can be done by just simply click and drag this Ctrl tool. I'll just Ctrl 0 reposition this here and drag. So pretty much similar to what we did with the rectangle tool. And the polygon tool is interesting. Now if I double click on here, it is going to give me the number of sides and star inset percentage. Now I can decide how much size you wish to use with this tool. Let's say I want a triangle, so I'm going to give 3. If I want a pentagon, I would use 5, and if I want to use hexagon, I can use 6, and so on and so forth. So let's just stick to a triangle, and I'll just give number 3 here, and I'll be able to draw triangles. Okay, let's keep clicking here. I'll just go back here, and here star inset is set to 0% here. Okay. So now I have my triangle. It's also good to know while you're drawing the shape, you need more of the same shape. You can use right arrow key or left arrow key to increase or decrease the number of shapes. Or even if I use up arrow keys or down arrow keys, I can increase the number of rows and columns using the same option. Now, if you want to reduce the gap between these copies you're drawing, you just have to hold Control key and use right arrow key or left arrow key. Here, I can just make this quickly like so. So the objects can completely remove the gap using this tool. So once again, the arrow keys play an important part in increasing the speed in which you can create new shapes. Similarly, if I simply click with the polygon tool on the page, here polygon tool on the page, I get this dimension box. I can choose width and height and number of sides and star inset as well. Now let's just say I want a star, so I'll just give 5 sides, and then let's just give Star inset 50% and give OK. So there I have my star. So if I use the same tool again, double click, just here, double click, and I'm going to give this as 90% for now. And you can see we have a much thinner line or corner on the star. So the higher the star inset is, the sharper these corners will become, and the lower it is, going to make it more flat. So I'm just going to put these two shapes on the page and make them slightly smaller by scaling them. Another useful shortcut whenever you create shapes is they end up being created with an outline, like in this case, which you can wish to change the color of the outline or the stroke color. All you have to do is press Shift X and it will change the outline to fill color. That's an easy shortcut to swap between fill to stroke or stroke to fill. And then once again I have to fill. You can change the color different very quickly here. So this is also another very important feature in InDesign. We call it Pathfinder. It helps you combine shapes that you created. So in this panel you will find it under the Windows menu. It is under Objects and Layout, and here you will have the Pathfinder. This I like to place it in this here. I'll just dock it here. All right. Along with this, I also get the Align panel as well, which we'll look at that later. So for Pathfinder, we have a lot of options here, and these operations to combine shapes. So let's just say start with this one, and I have created some shapes here to practice what to do with the Pathfinder. The add will obviously combine these two shapes, and whatever color you have on the top will end up being used for the shape. So if I click on this icon, so I'll just select these two shapes first. And just if I click on this icon, and you see both of these shapes are now yellow, and it's one single outline, so it's combined into one object. Now let me show you the second options. I will select these two shapes. Now I'll give the subtract command, and as you can see, it has subtracted the object that was on top. So when I do subtraction, we will end up having just that inverted L shape remaining from the black square. So let's have a look at the third one. That's the intersect option. And select this, go to intersect. Again, this will leave us with just intersection of two shapes, and in this case, once again, the color will be used from the topmost object. Now exclude is the opposite of intersect, and that will do exactly opposite what intersect did. So everything that wasn't overlapping will stay. And minus back is another interesting one. That's the last option here. Just select this. It will leave us with something that we did with subtract, but the opposite thing. So let's just click here. So what we did with the subtract, it gave the opposite of what we did with there. It gave us the topmost object and subtracted the back object. Like reverse subtraction. So it is important to learn these operations. We'll be able to draw something a little bit faster instead of drawing a lot of shapes. You can just draw some couple of simple shapes and then choose the right Pathfinder options. Like here, if I have these shapes, select these shapes and go here. Now I can quickly choose subtract and remove this, and just one click I can create the door and the windows. And now if I quickly want to add all these into one shape, I'll just select all of these and give add, and there I have my whole house with just two simple operations. We managed to create this nice silhouette of a building very quickly and easily. So even though InDesign is not used to create drawings and illustrations, because Adobe Illustrator is the tool for that, it still offers quite a lot of features you can use to create simple design elements. I would always recommend to do even simple icons in Illustrator, but it is still good to be aware of things that InDesign offers when it comes to drawing the shapes. As mentioned earlier, that InDesign is not a drawing application, and I won't spend much time explaining about the drawing tools, but still it is important to be aware of knowing the drawing tools. And one of the drawing tools is the pen tool. Okay. So one of the drawing tools is pen tool, and it's actually a universal method in graphic design. It works the same in Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, and even in other applications like After Effects and Premiere Pro to define path or shapes by adding anchor point and adjusting direction handles. So on this page of the workbook, I have added a little exercise here to recreate these shapes with simple pen tool. You can screenshot this exercise and try this on your system. And after doing this exercise, you will feel like you want to learn more about this tool. I would recommend more practice with respect to the pen tool. Now I'll explain how it is used in here in InDesign, but before I walk through this little exercise here, I want to show you what's the point in using pen tool in InDesign. So I already created a shape and I will show you how to do this with the pen tool. Well, let me just show you first what's the point in actually having something like that. You can create a path with a pen tool for adding a text. So if you have a path ready, and from the toolbar to switch to type on a path tool, or you can use shortcut Shift T. Here I have that, Shift T. And if you have the path ready, just select it, click, and there you have your cursor. You can even start typing, or even I can use the fill with placeholder text option, and you can see the text is going to follow through the path. And to make it more visible, I'm going to select all the copying here and use shortcut Ctrl Shift up. Use Ctrl Shift, and there's another shortcut. I want to raise the baseline of the selected text, that is Alt Shift up arrow key, and that is going to shift my text up or down. So the way we lift up the text from the path, but it's still going to follow the shape of the path. Now the cool thing is that you can actually use this not only in open paths, but the shapes like ellipse here in the same tool. It's just here and click here, and once again I can select all the text and type in fill placeholder. Okay, Now I can select all the text, increase size, make the formatting changes like so. I'm going to simply remove the stroke color for now. I'll just remove the stroke, none. Okay. So I actually don't need to see the outline. I can hide it and we only see the copy. So if I press W, and this is how it will appear in the print. If I wanted to move the text around this shape, if I can zoom in a little bit closer. Here I have 2 points, that is a start point, and this is an end point. So if I wanted to, for example, have the top half of the circle to be covered with text, I can just set up these points. Let's just move this to here and move the beginning of the text towards here properly. Okay, so notice that we have of course overset text, but we increase the size of the font and we also have less space now, and even though that it is not conventional text frame, it still behaves like one. So I would also be able to use the thread options like another text frame. I could even create a text frame again around the circle and have the text around continuing at the bottom, but return from the left to right if I wanted to. So using shapes and paths can be useful whenever you combine it with text, but it can also be used just simply create simple illustrations. So let me just show you how the drawing tools work for the first one. Now I'm going to show the pencil tool. Here you have the pencil tool, and the shortcut to access it is N. Now it can allow you to just draw simply freehand drawings like this. Now if I hold down Alt, then it will turn into a smooth tool and I can smooth this out. As you can see, this straight line is getting smoothened here. I can go in forever and do that smoothing. As you can see, this I have worked in here persistently, and it will come to a point where it will become a proper curve, a smooth curve. And there I have made this into a smooth curve. Now with using the smooth tool, just draw over a couple of times the path to refine it, or you can also switch to the tool that is a smooth tool here. Again, you can switch to the tool and do the same thing here again. So there will be a small inaccuracies and it will be removed and refined. So we ended up quite nice detail here, but if you want to be more precise, you should use the pen tool. The shortcut for pen tool is P, and you can define the first anchor point and then click and drag around this like so. So that's when you start to see handles as well. And I'm just going to go here and continue drawing the next section, and so on and so forth. As I mentioned, I have a whole separate course on this pen tool that will be explaining the deeper in-depth pen tool. Now another tool that can be useful is if you create a path and you want to divide it, you can use the scissors tools for that. Just click here, I'll just click here, and it divided this path into two separate segments like so. This applies on shape as well, but Also, it is good to remember that the direct selection tool or white arrow key also works the same. You can change this here like so. You can make changes with the handles as well. You can edit them like this, so it can be adjusted both in direction and the length. You can even highlight multiple anchor points and then move it around like so. And that will automatically select the whole path. Going back to my tool, select the whole path, and then I can just move it like so. So if you want to practice the pen tool, you have a couple of examples here. The first one is quite simple because it has only straight lines. So that's why you don't have to click and drag. You just click to define the anchor point, and then when you get to the beginning of the shape, you can just close it. Use the pen tool, P for pen tool. So I'm just quickly drawing this and following along by clicking on the points and points only. You just go around these points, and there I have my star shape properly traced out. Now it was as simple because it had straight lines. Now it will get more complicated when you have a curvy shape like this. I'll use the pen tool again. Once you get to the curve point, it gets a little bit more tricky, like always. Now I'm going to click here. It is my straight point. Now I'm going to click on here and click and drag for the curve. Once I'm done with this, I can just click here because it is already curved. Now this will work in case of symmetrical shape only. So it is having a symmetry here, and it will work only because it is symmetrical shape. Otherwise, you will have to click and drag the other curve and define it properly as well. So hold, click, and there my other shape is drawn. Click and drag again, there, and click. Click and drag again, and then click. So there I have my shape ready with the curves as well. Now when it comes to more complicated shapes like this Christmas tree, once again I can start with a point at the top. And then I'm going to click and drag to define this curve. Okay, alright. So if you notice that there is a handle which is going towards this direction. So if I click here, it is always going to go around and then try to come back. So to avoid that, I'm going to go to the point. What I will do is click on the last anchor point. When you see this arrow key next to the pen tool, then you're supposed to do that. And most of the mistakes you do is when you here have a plus sign, then you do this, and then this. That just doesn't do stuff. So you have to be very precise where you click. So when you see that there's an arrow key next to the pen tool, then click here. Okay, and just go back here. Okay, now click. It's not working here. Let's just do, I'll repeat the step again. Delete this, pen tool, click and drag, and now I'll just click here, and you can see the anchor handle has cut. So now I can now click here, and it will draw again properly. And click and drag, it's a little bit curved here. Okay, again I'll do the same thing, click, and that will cut the handle. So I'll keep repeating the steps throughout this tracing the shape. It's not proper here, just click and drag. Alright, click and cut, click and drag, click cut, click and drag. So I'll go on repeating throughout this procedure. You can follow along these steps. Click. You can hold shift and it will give you a straight line. Click and drag. And once you get to useful this tool, you can use it throughout the other applications that are Adobe After Effects, Premiere Pro. And make sure you learn this tool anyhow. If you are into designing profession, it is going to be helpful in all the other aspects as well. Click and go to the first point. When you go to the first point, you have this little circle when you get there. Click here and there. The first point. Alright. So that just worked out fine. And if you don't get this right in the first try, don't feel bad, because it is something that will come with practicing a little bit more. Practice on the little simple shapes before and then go with these complex shapes, and you'll be fine to work with that. Now, because drawing shapes is less important, to draw unique paths on which you can add text. Drawing shapes may be less relevant in designs than to be able to put type on path. And now we have discussed drawing shapes and drawing tools. We'll be covering an important topic of stylizing video, stylizing or designing or improving appearance of your design elements, and how to work with colors. Working with colors in InDesign can seem very simple, but to work with them effectively, you will have to learn to work with swatches. Now, the Swatches panel should be already on the right side by default, and you should get a couple of default swatches in there. Plus, you can of course create your own custom swatches. You can also have a color panel. If you don't see that, you can find the color panel from the Windows menu, color, and you can use shortcuts F6 as well. You can just dock it in right here and there. Okay, so I have color panels active. You can quickly find the colors here. The best thing to do here is to switch to either CMYK or the RGB. Color modes from the panel, depending on what you're working on, whether it's screen or print. I'm just going to switch to CMYK here, so you can see that now we get the 4 values here: cyan, magenta, yellow, and krypton. And K stands for key color. Now, if we know the color code that we need, we can just type in here manually, and I could just bring down the K value to 0, and then we get this color. So this is the percentages of each of these inks, which we call process colors, and they are standard printer colors. So if I want this new color to be added as a swatch, all I have to do is to click on the panel menu and choose Add to Swatches. So Swatch Panel, and choose this. Add to, select this here. Okay, now add to swatches. Now, as you can see, once I do that, I will see the color, and it will automatically use this ink percentages as the name of the swatch. Next, the swatch name, I can see this icon. Double click here. I can change the name of the color here as well. You have this little icon here. It means it is a mixture of 4 primary colors for print, and this would look different if it's an RGB color or if it's a spot color. That's something I'm going to explain, but for now I would like to show you how to use this color. Let's say I create a frame. I'm going to use the type tool. Let's take a type tool here and let's make a frame like so. I'll type in something like this is the title. This is the title. Let's select all of these. I'll make sure the text is a little bigger. Okay, for readability purpose. Now in the paragraph formatting options, let's go back here. This indent given, I'll just go back and put it back to 0. It because remembers the previously given intent from there. Now from the swatches panel, I can decide where I want to use this color. First of all, I'm going to have the frame selected like this because it allows me to use the color for 4 different attributes. Now when I have this icon highlighted, that means the colors I'm going to assign will go to this frame. And when I select this icon, it means the colors will be assigned to the copy within the frame. So if I have this setting and have a fill color is highlighted for the copy, I assign the color here, and that's what's going to happen. Now let me go back to black, and if I switch to the stroke, let's say here, and then apply this, and that's what's going to that is going to be applied on the stroke. The fill is black, but now we have a stroke around it with our new custom swatch. Now this is something I would avoid because it makes very difficult to read, but in some cases, so when you have big titles with bulky text, it might actually work fine. But definitely try avoiding using this feature on the body copy. So if I want to quickly remove the color from the stroke, instead I can just switch to the container. So remove the stroke. Maybe I just switch to container first and then choose the fill color and create the custom swatch we created there. Okay. Remember that was a shortcut I showed you before. Pressing Shift X would swap the currently selected attribute, which is a fill color, and move it onto the stroke of the container. So Shift X is a quick way of swapping them, and then I wanted to increase the size of the stroke. Then if I want to increase the size, I want to make this title at the center. Just go ahead here and give the stroke as none here. Okay. This I can also give Shift X, and that gives out as outline as well. Alright, so let's say I want to make this centered in the frame. So all I can do is go to my type tool. Let's make it center align. Now if I want to align vertically to center, all I need to do is right click here and choose frame options, text frame options. Here I would have to choose align center. I'm going to check it in the preview. It's on center, and give OK. So this is something we discussed earlier, but it's always good to remind that where to find these options. So to have the text center exactly in the middle of the frame, we have to do 2 alignments. First of all, paragraph alignment, and then from the text frame options, the vertical justifications need to be done at the center. So that's a vertical alignment, while the other one is the horizontal alignment. But now that I created this, I can easily change the size of the frame, and the copy is always going to be centered like so. Now let's just come back to colors because apart from adding swatches from the color panel, you can also use images to sample colors from. So I can switch to the tool called Eyedropper Tool. I is the shortcut for it, and with that I'll just click here. I have the Eyedropper Tool, click, and I'll just click somewhere in here, and you can see it immediately is picked up as the fill color. So if I want to save that as a swatch, so I can just click as new swatch from here, and that color will be automatically added, registered as an RGB swatch. If you see the icon here, it shows the RGB swatch. I can see the color values here. I can also see the icon here on the right side that is different from the other colors. If I double click on the swatch, I can change it to a CMYK color. Like here, go up, and here CMYK. I'll check the preview on it. It will give me slight changes in my color, maybe a subtle transition. Plus, I also prefer to keep my percentages, the ink percentages, even, so not in fractions. So I'll just round this out off at 80, and this one as 27, and the black value as 1414. I'll just give OK, and there I have my fill color. So changing these few things won't make a big difference, but it gives me a better CMYK values to work with. So I can click OK, but that's not good to mix with RGB and CMYK swatches in the same document. So when you use Eyedropper Tool to sample colors from an image, don't forget to update the swatches to CMYK if you're working for print. You can also avoid this issue if you first convert the image color mode in Photoshop to CMYK before you bring them into InDesign. There is also another tool. If you right click on the eyedropper here, you have a color theme tool, which will automatically sample more than just one color. So it doesn't matter where you click, it will sample the whole image and pick all the dominant colors. Just one click. So clicking on the image gives me this color theme or color palette, and I would be able to add these to all my swatches by clicking on this icon, and it even organizes them into color group. Now notice that this color is slightly smarter to work because it automatically added here. Just click on this option and it automatically makes this into CMYK mode. Now when applying colors, convert as document intent, or you want to say, you can decide. Let's just double click on here. It will ask convert as per document intent, or convert to CMYK, or convert to RGB. Also you can ignore opacity and other applied effects while picking on colors. So let's just click on that. Now you have a different colors theme here, and you can see this. And it's affiliated, and if you click here, we have more different color themes here: bright versions, darker versions, deeper or more muted colors. So there's an alternative options that we can choose from. Let's say I'm going to go for more muted colors. I can select this, and once I can add this to my swatches panel, and right there it came as the muted theme. Now I can select them once again, and or alt click on this icon just to select single color from this. Let's just say alt click. You can select one of these colors as well. Now all these swatches that you save in the document will be stored in the document, and they won't be transferred automatically to new documents, but whenever you open back this InDesign file, it will have the list of colors. So to keep things tidy, I will always remove any swatches or that you are not actually using. There is no point of keeping irrelevant swatches. You can go here, select all unused, and then you can go ahead and delete them. That all highlighted the swatches that haven't actually been applied on any of these objects, and then I've clicked the delete option to remove all those. I'll just go back one step, give undo. Just to have all these swatches that we created before, I want to show that you can transfer swatches from one document to another by again using the panel menu and choosing save swatches. Let's say I'll just go back up here and we'll create a different file here. I'll just go name as my swatch, and save. So once I save it, now if I create a new document, let's create a new document, create, and if I look at my swatches panel, I don't have any here. These are my default swatches, and every document is created, or with every print document is created, I can go to panels menu here and choose load swatches, and let's just go here and give back that my swatch file, and it will open the new swatches here. Now swatches, and at this point I could decide to use the file that I created, which is an independent file, and just for now I'll just go ahead and load swatches. And if I go back from here, workbook, I use this file here. I have just imported swatches from the file as well. So InDesign will resolve the same thing as that exported color swatch file, and it will load all those swatches into this fresh new document. So when you work with the brand colors, this is a very important technique to make sure that you're always consistent using the same colors, and that you're not wasting time in recreating same swatches every single time you start a new document. If these swatches are important for you and you want them to always show up in a new document, you can create more and save more time by closing all your documents. I'm going to close all my documents right now. No. I'm just simply going to go to my swatches, Windows, Color, and Swatches. Here. Now if I go to the panel menu, just load swatches, just load this, open. There I have all the swatches loaded right here, and just add here. Now every new document will be created from now on automatically will have all these custom swatches in them. So let's just create a new document, Ctrl N, and double click here, and you can see this has the swatches that I created already. I can even decide to remove the default colors if I wanted to, but if I just close the swatch panel and create a new document, I can demonstrate. And now that this new document is created, we already have colors in there. Just create a new document, and we have already colors in here. can have these custom swatches at the start, but there is still more to know about swatches, and we'll take a look at how to use gradient swatches and use spot colors as well. Now let me just show you how to create gradient swatches. I already have a gradient swatch from this last image that we created right here. Let's see how we can create another one from the image from here. Wait a minute, I'll just load that up. Here, this image as well. Ctrl 0, fit to screen. So first of all, we need to save a few swatches. I'm going to my base gradient on this image. So I'm going to select all three areas from it. Having the square highlighted, I'm going to use an eyedropper tool. Select this and quickly I'll just sample the color of the leaf here. Click, and there, this lighter shade, I'll just click this light. To undo this, I'll choose this lighter shade right here. Just click, select this lighter shade. Click eyedropper, select this color. Choosing the wrong color, just eyedropper, and this way too light. Maybe I'll just eyedropper and this. Okay, this one seems fine. So it immediately assigns the color to the square, and I will make sure that I have saved it as a swatch. Let's go to swatches. I'll just save this as a swatch. Now I'm going to select the other one, and I'm going to sample a darker brown, maybe something like this. Just sample, and this is a way too dark one. So undo this, sample maybe this one here. Okay. And I'm actually going to use a green instead of brown, so I will save this as well. And it's not a problem if I have more than what we need for the gradient. I'm going to select a green shade here for now. Let's just choose eyedropper, hold Alt, and just select maybe this. I'll pick this other green color and we'll save that. Not this one, I'll just choose something else. Maybe this seems fine. I'll just save this green now for now. Also, I will choose one more green that will be a lighter in shade. I'll just choose eyedropper, hold Alt, and you can just hover, click and drag over the colors, and I'll just select a tad light green like so. And I'll add this as a swatch as well. Now I have these four colors sampled from this image. I can put them into a group by using this icon. I'll just select all these using holding Shift and select group. I'll just give a gradient. Okay. So now they are grouped together, and now I can select this other rectangle here. Zoom out a bit. Ctrl 0. Alright. And from the Windows menu under color option, I'll open the gradient panel here. And this panel will allow me to assign gradients or create new gradients, but the best is to simply start by clicking on whatever it shows up in here. Of course, I can later edit and change the color on the gradient. So I'll just click here. By default, normally you start with 2 color stops. If you have 3, you can just drag this down and just click and drag, and then it will disappear. Now, having one of them selected, I'll just select this one. I'll click and drag and put it over this swatch release, and there I have my color sampled on my gradient. Now, so I want to replace the one on the other edge with the green color. Let's say I want this green color. I just select this first, click and drag, and there you see the plus sign, and replace. So all I have to do is drag and drop into the color stop and that I wish to replace. I just click and drag here, and I'll just put it like so. I can put all 4 as well, like that. I can make it back and forth. This, if I want this before and this later, I can do that as well. So I have this nature green blue tint, brown tint here. So once again, replacing that color stop is just by clicking and dragging from swatches to the gradient panel. I can even balance the color spots here using this slider. This will make it a little softer or sharper, the transition between the 2 colors. Also, you can reverse this order by clicking on this option, and even the type of the gradient, maybe radial or linear. So once now I'm happy with my gradient, I can go ahead here and click on the new swatch, and you can see this gradient has been saved as a gradient swatch. So gradient swatch is a combination of existing swatches used as color stops, but of course you don't need to use swatches. You can just highlight one of these color stops and go into the colors panel, from where you can use CMYK values. Click here, and you can see the CMYK values here, and you can adjust the colors from within here as well. Now I'd like to mention from the swatches panel, in the panel menu, you can choose a new color swatch, which will give you a dialog box. New color swatch will give you this dialog box here. And you don't have to rely on currently selected color. You can switch to color mode, different color mode here. Let's say Pantone spot colors or HKS colors here. And once you select one of them, you will be able to find all the colors in that book, and you can even search for a certain color by code. So type, just go here by CMYK coded. And here, the process spot colors. Let's say 92. I can choose this color, or maybe 98, and gives me this color. This shows up as a mixture of CMYK colors. Double click here. So I'll just give it OK, and it will be added as my new color swatch. You can double click here again, click here, and change it later on as well. So a new color swatch, before I add it, I can choose that this color should be a spot color. And what that means is that instead of it going to be a mix from CMYK values, it will require a special pre-mixed ink that you can purchase from the company who makes these colors. And like in this case, it will be Pantone color you need to buy. But it's good to know that when you import colors from color books, some of them might be relying on CMYK values, while other might be pre-mixed, and those we call spot colors. So notice that this is one of the imported colors. I still mixed it from the CMYK values. But if I go back again to a new color swatch from the panels menu, comes up here with the CMYK values. So I choose another color book instead of CMYK coated. So this time I'm going to choose solid coated. Just go here and say solid coated. And the main advantage of using this pre-mixed colors or solid colors is that they will look exactly the same. So there won't be any shift in them, and that's a great way of making sure the color in the logo looks exactly the same. So whoever is working on identity design or brand design would normally recommend the client to use a solid or pre-mixed color. And then it would be written in the brand guide that for consistency, this is the color that needs to be used wherever the logo is going to be printed or wherever brand reappears. So let's just say I want this orange color. And when I add this to my swatches panel, it shows up as a spot color here. And even it has its own color mode, the LAB or the lab color mode, which makes it easy to distinguish from CMYK and the RGB. And we'll discuss more about this topic when we are preparing the work for the print. And that's it about the swatches. Now we will be looking up of what about the effects. InDesign is not the tool for photo editing and creating special effects. Photoshop is the one for that. But still, InDesign has some effects that you can use to stylize your image frames or text frames, out of which we commonly used is called drop shadow. Now, if you select the image like this, you can quickly try it out, but just by simply clicking on this icon in the options bar. It shows drop shadow. Click on here, and this will apply the default drop shadow option. And then if you want to make changes to it, you can all click on the same icon and it will come up with the properties here. Now, as long as you have the preview option on, you will be able to see the changes, like changing the distance, changing the angle, or even changing the opacity of this effect. I'll just bring it down, and there you can see the change happening. Or maybe you can increase or decrease the size of this. Now the size is going to make it more blurred, so increasing the size will create a more soft shadow, and by reducing the size will make it more hard on the edges. And you also have an option to change its color from here as well. It's a cyan or black. And the blending mode of the shadow as well. But notice that once we are in the effects area, we see the drop shadow options on the left side. We actually have all the list of all the different effects here as well, like bevel emboss, which you can make image more 3D looking by adding the highlights and shadows on the side. Just maybe increase this size of this. You can see effect becoming more and more prominent. I'll just bring this down quite a bit. And this looks like a button. Maybe if you want to soften that effect as well, you can use this option. You want to increase the depth, direction up or down. Again, this is an effect which has additional options, and you can tweak and refine how you want it to look like. Once you're ready with updating the effects, just click OK. Now let me show you another interesting effect here. It's called feathering. When you select an image, you will see it has an opacity value here. It has an opacity value, and that's the visibility of the image, and that can be controlled from here. We can reduce it or increase it. But instead of controlling the overall opacity, we can also create transitional opacity changes, which is called feather. Now there are 3 different types of feathering in InDesign: basic, directional, and gradient. I'll show you all these 3. First, you have to select an image here. You go to this option. Here you have this basic feather. Once I choose this, you'll see immediately that we have the edges soften out. I can increase the width of it using this feathering width. We can also change the other settings like stroke, choke, that will harden out the edges, and noise, say 50% noise, and corners sharp, rounded. So these are some options that I could use with this particular basic feather effect. So if I go for, let's say, directional feather, I can choose directly from here. Let's cancel this. I'll just apply this on the second image. I'll just give this a basic feather, regular, just a little bit more. Basic feather, give OK. Directional feather, I'll just give to FX, directional feather. On the second image, it will look slightly different because we have an option of a direction, and we can decide how much feather we want on each side of the edges. Say if I increase the top feather, I can use shift click to just have incremental of 10s, and we will have feather only from that angle. And of course, if I want to make this consistent throughout the edges, I could do is apply a link here, and it will apply from all the sides. I'll just go back and bring it down, and it acts like on the basic feather as well. I can break the link. I can do it on one particular side as well, and put this on 0, 0, and this one is 0 as well. But if I have a 30 mm feather here, I can start using the angle to change it like so. So I'll keep it this way, and just give it OK. Now we have another option called gradient feather. Here I can choose gradient feather. Here I have option called gradient swatch stops. So it's going to affect the opacity of the image from this direction. Again, we can change the angle of this from here. We can choose the type of an feather, that is radial or linear. We have this white one stop here. By default it is on 0% opacity, so that's where the image is completely disappearing, and the black stop here has 100% opacity. It makes the image 100% visible. So you can control how exactly the transition as well, and you can even create new strokes like here and change their opacity like so. You can also reverse this in just one click. Plus you also have option to change the location using the percentage method, and all sorts of possible changes you can create here. So these are the three different types of feathering images, and then you can also have corner effects in InDesign. Let's go to this page here. Corner effects are very easy to use. Again, you can click on this yellow icon, click and drag, and you'll get this corner rounded. And selecting any of these, you can select any of these corners, and you can get the rounded shape corners as well in the frame. And if you want to assign a specific size for this changing value, you can assign the value here. I click and hold Shift, and it will increase with the increments of 10 here as well. I can also change this from here as well. I can also have a different kind of bevel corner as well. From here I can go fancy with this. Rounded is by default, inverse rounded. Or if you want to revert back to make consistent again, then one of the rounded is good to go for. Now if you select this, and if you hold Shift, it will change it from one side and simultaneously from one side as well. You can go back like so if you want to control one particular corner here. Now undo this, I'll just give a click, and if I hold Alt and do that, give me all corners. Now there's something we need to discuss, is working with styles. It's more like a preview of what styles can do. If you want, you can actually save and capture all these attributes that you see here in the drop shadow here. Drop shadow, stroke, and everything will be stored as an object style, and quickly will be reapplied on other image in just one single click. What I'm going to do, I'm going to select this image. And first of all, I would like to add a corner effect to that. Just corner, rounded corner. Okay, and I would like to have a stroke around it. Maybe this one, I'll add this white, give a white one. Let's add a stroke, okay. And I would like to have a drop shadow as well. And all clicking on the drop shadow. Also, I want to change the properties here. Let's bring down the distance to 0. I'll bring back my shadow like that. I'll just maybe I'll just take down the stroke a tad bit. Alright, so now I want this to be saved as an object style. All I have to do is go to drop down menu here, new object style, click on this. It will give me all these attributes which I have added here. So let's just say object style 1 is the name I want to set it to. You can rename that and go ahead and click OK. Now if I go up here with this image, I can apply, click here, click, and then one click, and you can apply the object style in just one single click. immediately it updates. So let's just say the one here. Okay, select and give object style, and immediately it gave me back that object style that I saved earlier. So that's important to mention whenever you work with effects. For the sake of consistency, it's good to save them as object styles, and it will save you a lot of time, and you will be able to reapply them very quickly and easily. Now we'll be discussing about the blend modes. Using blend modes can give you better results, and you can access them from choosing this drop down menu here. You can choose transparency, and within the selection you'll find the blending modes category here, blending options. So there are multiple categories. Let's start with normal. And first of all, you need to select an image here, starting with transparency and normal. Normal is the default blending mode, and it will always be normal. All the images will be. Now next we have the option is multiply, which is going to combine the current image with its background in a way that everything that's brighter in the image will disappear or will become invisible, and only the dark details will be merged into the background. So we had this white background here, had before one background, and it got merged into that purple color in the background. So when you choose multiply, it's as if it's going to remove the white from the black and white image, and now we only see the character blended into the background. So multiply is a great blend mode when you have images with pure white background or very bright background, and the opposite of this is screen. Let's apply this screen. Let's just apply this for now. Apply, multiply, and give OK. Now the opposite of that is screen. Transparency, and change it to screen. It will apply like this. You can also have a similar result by choosing light. Lighten is giving me a much better result because the image is blending back completely, removing the background altogether. Now you can even combine images and colorize them by combining them with the background color and image of something that's more like a texture. So I will use the overlay blend mode now. I'll just select this and go to FX, transparency, and choose overlay. So it will result in a nice mixture of whatever is behind the current image and the image itself. Similarly, we can use the colorize images. Let's say I have this color block over this effect right there. I'll go to effects, transparency, and I will choose the colorize option, color, and as you can see now it will be colorized with the color that I have the block in here. If I increase the shape size, it will match with the background. Also, if I go here in the swatches panel and I change the color, it will update. Let's just select the here and then OK. So that has updated like that. Now similarly, if I have the black block here, I have a colored image here. If I go to effects, transparency, and now if I choose the color, it is going to change my colored image into a grayscale image or a black and white image, or you can say it's a monochromatic image. So experimenting with blend modes is another great way of creating visual interest in your composition, and it's also good to combine multiple images together and create a more seamless composition. Make sure you test it out, and let's move on to the next topic, that is grids and guides. Working precisely is a very important topic in graphic design. So aligning objects to each other according to a grid are some crucial techniques to create pleasing and impactful composition. So one of the first features you will notice that when you start using InDesign is the smart guides. When you're moving things around, you will see there are either purple or magenta lines or these green lines. These are called smart guides. They're already helping you to align your objects on the page, and you can find this option in the view menu under the grids and guides option. And here you have smart guides. You can turn it off if it's distracting or in a way while working, and you can even use the shortcut Ctrl U to activate or deactivate it. Now you can practice this feature and try to align images like this, and you will notice that smart guides not only allow you to help in one single row, but it also makes sure that the distance that is going to be uniform while you're placing them. So it is a very handy, useful feature, and you can work very fast without defining guides yourself. It's just like so. And if you feel if you need to be more precise, then you can always create your own guides. And the easiest way you can add guides is by using rulers, which I mentioned you can turn on by using Ctrl R. You can also find them from the view menu, and you have this hide rulers option here. Rulers will show up on the top of the left. You can actually use this for a lot of different things. First of all, you can click and drag, and you'll get this new guide. You can also do the same from the left as well. You can click and drag and have both vertical and horizontal guide on the page. If I want to select these guides, you have to go to the view menu and grids and guides. You can lock guides, switch off this option, lock guides. You can use the shortcut Ctrl Alt semicolon, click here. Now you can actually make changes and move around like so. Now, and while I have them selected, I can see that position in here, x-axis. Say if I want it to set like this one at height of 20 millimeter, it will come to the 20 millimeter away from the top of the page. Say I want this to be 100 millimeters from the left side of the page. I'll just put in 100 value, press enter, and it will come to this part of the page. Now once you have guides on the page, you can start moving things around and align them easily using these guides. It allows you to have a perfect positioning. In case you want to use them throughout the document, you have to select them and copy them into your master page. So if I select them, now go to edit menu, you can cut them. If I go to the master page, let's just go to master, go to edit menu, and make sure you use this option, paste in place, to make sure it goes exactly where we originally took them from. Now they will show up not only in that page, but I was working in all the pages of the document. Like here, all the pages is right there. Another thing you can do with the rulers is that you can change the measurement units of this on the documents by right-clicking on the rulers. You can adjust the measurement from millimeters to centimeters and this points, inches, pixels, and so on and so forth. And from the same place, you can also choose delete all guides on the spread, and that is going to go ahead and delete all guides on the spread. And there, and go back here, the guides have been deleted. In case you want to change the origin point of this, you can click here and drag and put it from here, from the margin you use. You can just put it here and it will come as a 0 from here as well. Now you'll see that my ruler will change the points and all the. Now if I want to set it to origin point, I'll just default top left corner, double click here, and it will come back to my original point. Similarly, to guides, you can also use the document grid, which you can turn on from the view menu. Grids and guides, show document grid. You can also use the shortcut Ctrl quotation. Once it's come, you can also, of course, change the size of the grid. But by turning the grid on, it doesn't mean that your images and objects will align and snap to the grid. You will also have to make sure that it is enabled again from the view menu, and under the grids and guides, snap to grid. Here, snap to document grid. You Ctrl Shift quote as a shortcut, and now it's turned on. Now you will see that image will particularly snap to the document grid. Just give undo to that. And there, it works properly with respect to the grid. We use grids in graphic design very often to create more pleasing and harmonious compositions. And as I said, if you want to change the size of the grid, you can go to the preferences, go to edit, go to preferences. You can use the shortcut Ctrl K, and within here, the grids, we have this properties here. You can change the size of the grid. That is here, increment every 10 points or maybe something else. Relative to the top of the page, you want to view this if you want to change the color of the grid as well. Now if I give OK, it will change to 10 points increment, and I can work more precisely and have more options for alignments for every object. The grid is of course consistent throughout the whole document, and don't forget, if you want a grid setting to stay consistent for every new document, make sure you change this preference when there is no document open in InDesign. Now there's another feature called baseline grid, which you can use to make sure that the text in different frames will be aligned to each other. I have a separate document for this, which I'll show here. Okay, so here I have a separate document open for baseline grid. So once I see that file, you will see that the text is aligned to the baseline grid. One here on the right and one on the left is floating away from the baseline grid. Now, first of all, baseline grid is similar viewing option you can also find under grids and guides, and in this document it's already visible, but this is the place I can hide it. you can use shortcut Ctrl Alt quotation, and here you can hide the baseline grid. I'll hold Ctrl Alt Coat to bring it back, and you can switch it on and off using shortcut or going into the view menu. But having it turned on doesn't mean that it's actually activated, because this frame here is on the left is not going to snap to these baseline grids, while one on the right is automatically shifting lines no matter where I placed it. So how to activate this? It's very simple. All you need to do is select the text frame here, and then double click here, switch to the type tool, and here in the properties I have the option here, align to baseline grid. This is close to where the hyphen option is. Just click on here and the text will align to the baseline grid. If I want to, I can remove this option. It will go back to its original position, and it is free to move around or make it constrained by document baseline grid, similar to the normal grid in the document. We also have a preference for the baseline grid under the same area. So here in the first section about the basement grid and increments used for it, you can even set where you want to start this grid, from top of the page or from top of the margin. All these techniques can help you work precisely in the InDesign document. Besides the technique that we have looked at, we can also rely on the Align panel for organizing and distributing objects on your pages. So I have 4 images here. I'm going to show you a few ways that you can use this panel. If I select all 4 of these images, this, and select all of these images, I want them to be aligned to the top edge of this image, and all you have to do is click on this icon and click on this align top edges, and they will be immediately aligned to the top edges. If I undo this change, instead try align bottom edges, it will go to the bottom, and we'll select the lowest image and use it as a reference, and all of them will go down there. Now if I do undo again and I choose one of them at the middle, let's say align vertical centers, it will choose center of this selection, and it will be used as a center point and the basis of alignment. Similarly to this, if you have objects in a column, you need to align them, then you would use right, left, or center here. And once you have these aligned, the next step is usually that you want to distribute them evenly, for which you can again use this second row of columns. Say one here, distribute horizontal centers. Click on here and it will be distributed with even spacing here. Again, if you had images in column on top of each other, you would use this icon here. Now there's another feature called distribute spacing, which you might need to see in this panel. If you don't, just go to here and click on your show options if you don't see that. And it will reveal the additional settings, and they're really useful. So I actually use this more often from the align panel, because with this you can specify the exact distance between images. So if I want to say have 5mm gap, so use spacing 5mm gap and click on this option. You can decide whether I want to use this vertically or horizontally. In this case I will choose horizontal space. You click on this and it will give me exactly 5mm spacing. Now if I set this down to 0 and then click on this, it will give me quickly remove this big gaps between the images. There's another interesting feature. You can do a couple of steps which I have the images again back the way they were. Let's go back here. Okay. So there's another option that's called key object, and having all these 4 images selected, I can change the alignment to key object. Here are a few other options as well. Now I can select the key object. I want this to be the key object, and I want everything to be aligned with this as a reference point. So I'll just click on this, and all the other images will align with respect to this image because it is the leader to the key object. Also, don't forget to check your alignment option, which is set to selection or key object. And also notice that we have other options like align to margins and align to page, which means that now if I use the distribution like distribute horizontal, let's say give a margin, distribute horizontal centers, just give here, it will come with respect to the margins that we have here. Now if I choose this to align to page and use the same option, it will be distributed with respect to page. So this panel is crucial for working really fast and organizing the objects on your pages. But let me show you on the next page another interesting technique. Let's go here. It's never a harm to repeat the features, but there's so many shortcuts that I'm mentioning, and it is good to practice them. So when you alt click and drag the copy, it will always copy here. When you alt drag the object and then you press the right arrow key, it was giving you a multiple copies here. With just one step, and so you can have as many steps during this one duplication, and when I let go of these, it will create all these instances. There's another useful technique which I actually haven't mentioned. It is called live distribute, which means you can have a selection of this object and you quickly want to adjust the spacing between them, but make sure that they are evenly distributed. You can click on the right, hit this right or left control point and keep holding down space, and then just keep holding space. Click on here and keep holding space, and you can change it like so. You will be able to start moving together. It almost works like an accordion. So coming back to the previous page, if I select these all images and hold down, click and then hold down space, it is going to give me this evenly distributed spacing. It's a little bit faster and more hands down technique. So instead of typing in the value, you just quickly look at it and align it to the certain size you think will fit your composition. It's all about the alignment and distribution and the grids and guides. Now practice it more as long as it becomes your second nature. InDesign does a brilliant job at helping you to align objects to each other and to create a pleasing composition. So far, we have worked on the text and images. Now we will be working on combining them together in the next chapter. We're starting to looking more advanced compositional techniques like working with layers, text wrap, anchoring images, and even masking images.